Hi guys, welcome to Kraku. This video we're doing something a bit different than our regular videos. This video we're focusing on an aspect that we've got a lot of requests on. We're going to be making a video on speed math. So this video is about speed math. Just basically it's a series of videos that we're going to be doing. This is the first of them, where we're basically going to tell you methods to calculate stuff quickly. Right, this became very important because yes, CAT has calculator, but there are a lot of other management exam tests that do not have a calculator, right? XAT until this year did not have a calculator. NMAT still does not have a calculator. SNAP still does not have a calculator, right? So finding methods to solve questions very quickly when it comes to doing big fractions, let's say 20519 divided by 8012, approximating these values, right? All of them become very important when you're, let's say, solving an LRDI set and you have to take the values of a chart and then subtract or divide and then find the approximate value. All of them become very important. So we decided to create a series for speed math and basically to help students understand methods to solve questions quickly. Today's session is going to be about percentage approximation. Right? So percentage approximation becomes very important not just in quant but also in DILR, because there are countless DILR sets where you have to calculate a percentage of revenue or percentage of allocation or whatever there is. There might be a table given to you, there might be a graph given to you, right? A graph might be given to you from which you have to draw the table, and then a certain percentage of that is what needs to be calculated for the question, and this needs to be done very quickly, right? And even let's say there is a calculator in the CAT exam, it is very much recommended, let's say, if you can calculate it quickly with your mind or if you can write it quickly on paper, it's always much easier. So we'll be focusing on this today, right? So let's take a look at what we're going to be doing in today's video and what exactly we'll be covering, the different methods for percentage approximation. Right. So I've basically divided this video into three parts: fractional equivalence, right, complement method, and doubling and halving method. So basically I'll just give you a gist of what these three are before we start with the video exactly. Fractional equivalent, let's say for example 50% is nothing but 1 by 2 of whatever needs to be calculated. At the same time 37.5% is nothing but 3 by 8 of whatever needs to be calculated. So 37.5% of, let's say, 200 might seem harder to calculate than 3 by 8 of 200, right? So it's much easier. So learning the fractional equivalent can be very easy, and understanding important fractions becomes very important for management exams, right? Coming to complement method, that is probably one of the most elegant ways to solve questions. What do I mean by complement method? Let's take for example 27%. This is nothing but 25% plus 2%, and using fractional equivalence I can write 25% as 1 by 4 and 2% as 1 by 50, right? So calculating 27% does not seem that hard right now if we, let's say, understand the complement method. Doubling and halving method is a similar part of complement, but let's say we have to do 40%. 40% can be done in so many different ways, right? 40% can be done as 50% minus 10%. 50% can be nothing but 1 by 2 minus 1 by 10, right? 40% at the same time can be 4 into 10%. One of the examples that we are doing later, let's say we have to calculate 37%, right? 37% can be very easily calculated as 40% minus 3%, right? And 40% can be written as one of these two ways. So basically doubling and halving method is also what we're going to cover in this video, right? So there's three main things. So let's get started, and at any point of time if you find something interesting you can take a screenshot to use it for your reference, because all of this is very important. So this is the first thing, we have important fractions. I thought before we get started with, let's say, example problems and how to approximate percentages, I thought doing this becomes very important, understanding important fractions, right? Because percentages might seem harder to calculate if you just not as hard to calculate if you just understand the fractional equivalent of it. right? Like 62.5% is nothing but 5 by 8, because 1 by 8 as the table shows is 12.5%, right? So 12.5 into 5 will be 62.5. So this table is extremely important because 10% is the easiest thing to calculate, right? If x is given to you, 10% is nothing but x by 10, because 10% will be 10 by 100, right? This will be equal to 1 by 10. So 10% is easy to calculate. Similarly, 20% will be 20 by 100, right? This is nothing but 1 by 5. All you have to do is divide the number by 5. Or to make it even simpler, the first thing you can do is just divide the number by 10, which is basically you have to shift a decimal point. Let's say the number, for example, is 428. 10% will be nothing but 42.8, because all you have to do is shift a decimal point from here to here, right? And then if you need to calculate 20%, you just have to multiply this by 2. If you need to calculate 5%, you just divide this by 2. So basically, using big important percentages, round number percentages as markers, and I would call it landmarks, to calculate other smaller percentages become very important, right? So 10% is, let's say, a huge landmark percentage. Similarly, 20%, if you're very comfortable with calculation, can be one. 25% is very important because all you have to do is divide by 4. 25% of 428 will be nothing but 107, right? All I did was divide by 4, and 25% of 428 is 107, right? 33.3%, 1 by 3. Alright, these fractions also become very important because let's say a problem says you need to calculate 15% of something. Now 15%, yes, it's a relatively easy percentage to calculate. I can write it as 10% plus 5%. Let's say you're short of time and you want an approximate answer and you have 4 options that you want to eliminate from. All I need to do is divided by 1 by 7, right? 1 by 7 will be nothing but 14.28%, right? If I can just divide it by 1 by 7 and then check the options, and let's say if we were to find 15% of 63. Now this might be slightly harder to calculate, but then if I can approximate using fraction, because I know 1 by 7 is 14.28%, which is close to 15%, right? I divide by 1 by 7, I get the answer as 9, right? And if your options are, let's say, if option A is 9.5, option B is 8, option C is 10 something, and option D is somewhere just above 9, let's say 9.3 or something, right? You know this is the correct answer, right? So let's say this, let's make this option as, let's say, 11 or something, right? We can make D as 9.3. That is definitely going to be the answer because it's the closest thing to 15%. So basically, using fractions to understand percentages, approximating it as close as possible, can be very, very helpful. Now let's use these fractions to understand the complement method to approximate percentages to the best of our abilities. Now we have a problem in front of us where we have to calculate 13% of 427. Now 13% is an odd number to calculate, isn't it, right? 13 is a prime number also. But if I write 13% as 12.5% plus 0.5%. Now I know 12.5% is nothing but 1 by 8, right? And then 5% is 1 by 20, so 0.5% will be nothing but 1 by 200. So it's easy. So all I have to calculate is 1 by 8 of 427 and then 1 by 200 of 427, and I add it up and I get 13% of it. So let's try doing that. So 1 by 8 of 427 will be nothing but 8 5 is 40, so 27 and then 53.375. Right, now 1 by 200, as I said, dividing by 10 or 100 is the easiest thing, right? So I can write 427 by 100 will be nothing but 4.27, and then this divided by 2 will be 2.135. So adding these up, I get 55.51, which is the answer for 13% of 427. Now you see what we did there, right? Instead of calculating 13% of 427, which ideally would look like 0.13 into 427. Now this can be time consuming, it will take a lot of time. If we break the 13% down to 12.5% plus 0.5%, which is nothing but 1 by 8 plus 1 by 200. Now, as I said, dividing by 10, 100 is the easiest thing. All you have to do is shift 1 decimal point for 10, shift 2 decimal points for 100. And because we're doing 1 by 200, we shift 2 decimal points and divide it by 2, and then we add it from 1 by 8. It's much simpler than calculating 13% of 427. Now, this might seem complex at first, but then it will take a bit of practice. As I said, the videos that we are making is to help you guys understand how to start solving questions like this in your mind. Initially, yes, you're going to have to use paper to, let's say, write it down, right? But there is no point, let's say, if I were to divide 427 by 8, there is no point doing 427 divided by 8 and then writing the answer like this, right? You have to put some stress on your mind, put that effort to try calculating 427 by 8 and putting numbers down. Even if you are slow at first, it's fine, right? But it's important for you to use your mind and try doing the division, because 8, 4, 10, all of them are easy divisions that you should be able to do. Now initially it's completely okay if you do 1 by 8 and then 1 by 200, and then you use paper to add these two numbers to get the final sum, right? So this is how you progress. You start by doing small divisions, let's say 1 by 8, 1 by 4, 1 by 10, 1 by 12, right? Approximate divisions, and then you can use the paper to add them up, and finally as you get better, you can do the entire thing in your mind. So we actually have a great tool on the Krakow website that you can use to improve your speed math abilities. We can go to krakow.in/speedmath, and then you can practice as many problems as possible. You can sort it by difficulty level and the mathematical operation that you want to do. Let's actually go to the website and try it out, and let's see how it's done. So yeah, we are at the website. This is the tool I was talking about that is there in the Krakow website, which is krakow.in/speedmath. It's a pretty neat tool that we have. A lot of people don't know about this, but you can use this tool on a daily basis to improve your mental ability skills for solving questions quickly, right? As I said, there are multiple mathematical operations that you have that you can choose, right? Addition, subtraction, and also you can set your difficulty level, right? And then it's just basically a set of questions that you'll have to solve. I think it's a set of 10 questions and you're timed, and you can basically keep that as a reference and do it on a daily basis and improve every single day, because you're improving your mental math is definitely going to help your performance in the quant section. Right, let's get back to the video and solve more questions to approximate numbers. Now that we have seen that we have a tool on the Krakow website that you can use, let's finish the rest of the video and basically understanding how things further are done. So let's look at the problem given in front of us, right? We have 38% of 219. Now, as I explained earlier, I can write 38% as 40% minus 2%. 2% is the easiest thing to calculate because it's nothing but 1 by 50, right? And 40% I can write it as 50% minus 10%. Now 50% is easy to calculate because all I have to do is divide it by 2. So I can write this as 109.5. And then 10% I can calculate by just moving one decimal point. I get 21.9, right? So getting the answer here, I get 87.6. Now dividing by 1 by 50 here, all I have to do is 21.9 divided by 5. I get 4.38, right? And then I have to finally do this subtraction to get the final answer, which will be 83.22. So 38% of 219 does not seem that hard right now. If you can, let's say, break it down into different percentages and doing it, right? If you don't have a calculator in the exam, this method is much faster than, let's say, doing 0.38 into 219. And as we saw earlier, you have a tool on the Krakow website to practice this sort of stuff. It can be addition, it can be subtraction, multiplication, it can be any of these stuff, right? So basically, by practicing more, it will be very easy, right? Try using the paper as less as possible. It's okay if you take a little time at first, but you are definitely going to improve. Let's look at another question, slightly bigger fraction this time. So we have 133.33% of 537. Now this might seem complex, but then we can break this big percentage down to 100% plus 33.33%. And 100% of 537 is nothing but 537 itself, right? Because 100% of anything is just the same thing. And 33.33%, as we saw in the fractions table, will be 1 by 3 of 537. Now I can write this as 537 plus 179, right? So this will be 716. 716 is the answer. Now 133.33% is easily calculated. Now this goes same thing for, I can write 166.67%, which is nothing but 100 plus 2 by 3. Right, this goes for multiple cases, right? Anything over 100 can be broken down as 100 plus something else. Let's say, for example, as we will see in the future questions, we can also approximate, right? Actually, we will see in the future questions. So basically, 133% of anything over 100 can be broken down as 100 plus something else. It will be much easier to calculate that time. 130% is nothing but 100 plus 30%, right? 100 plus, and then we can write that into 3 into 10%. So if I were to calculate 130% of, let's say, 192, right, I can write 100% of 192 as 192 itself, right? And then 30% of 192 I can write as 3 into 10% of 192, which will be 19.2, right? This will be 192 plus 57.6, and finally the answer would be 249.6. So yeah, I think it is not that hard, right? Once you get a grasp of how to break down percentages, it becomes much easier. Let's look at another question that we have. So 145% of 317. And let's do this question. You guys can do it too while watching the video. We'll do it in the same way that we've been doing while breaking down percentages into fractions, right? I can write 145% as 150% minus 5%, right? And this 150%, as I said, anything over 100, I'll break it down, right? It'll be 100% plus 50% minus 5%. And the good thing about 50% and 5% is, once I calculate 50%, which is nothing but 50% will be nothing but 1 by 2, right? 5% will just be divided by 10 of that. So 100% of 370 will be 317, right? 50% of 317 will be 158.5, and 5% of 317 will be, moving one decimal point, we get 15.85. So we have 317, which is 100%, we have 158, which is 50%, and then we have 15.85, which is 5%, right? So all I need to do is add these up. I get 459.65, which is 145% of 317. So by breaking down percentages into fractions, bigger percentages, calculation becomes much simpler. Alright, let's actually solve a problem and see how it is actually done. A company's sales increased by 27% from 239,000 to a new amount, right? However, due to market fluctuations, sales decreased by 12.5% from this new amount. What is the final sales amount after this changes? Now, let's observe the question. 27%, as I told earlier, can be broken down into 25% plus 2%, right? And 12.5% is nothing but 1 by 8 of the new amount. So I have to calculate 1 by 8 and then subtract it. So it becomes much simpler doing it this way than doing 0.27 into 239. Just for ease of calculation, let me take 239 here, right? Calculating 27% will be 25% plus 2%, right? 25% will be nothing but this divided by 4. So I can write this as 59.75. And then 2% I can basically write it as 1 by 50, which will be 4.78, and then calculating this, I basically get 64 point, this will be 3 and the 64.53, right? 64.53. So I basically added to 239, 64.53, I get 303.53. So the new amount is nothing but 303 5030 is the new amount, right? And now it is said that it decreases by 12.5%. 12.5%, as we know, is 1 by 8 of the amount. And 1 by 8 of this amount, it can be done because it's just 8. As I said, you have to get familiar with division of 8. I can basically write this as 8 3s are 24, 6 3, 8 7s are, and then 75, 9, 33, it'll be 4, and then it'll be 1, and then it'll be 2 5. So 1 by 8 of this is basically this, and then subtracting this, you basically get think this is the correct answer, but yeah. So basically you get the idea of how to break down percentages into and solving questions. I hope you enjoyed the video. We plan to come out with many more videos like this, basically helping you guys approximate percentages, making calculations easier for exams that you're going to be taking. And please do check out the speed math tool that I just showed you. It's very helpful to improve your calculations. Do it on a daily basis. It would really help you. Thank you so much.